Call of Duty Warzone is one of the best battle royale games you can play right now that really isn't a BR. It's hard to describe exactly what Warzone is, but it's not a battle royale in the traditional sense, although it does play by the same rules as one. With the popularization of the battle royale genre with games like Fortnite and PUBG, many BRs have come and gone. A lot of these games completely burn out upon release or fail to pick up any traction at all, and even COD BRs in the past have quickly burned out once the player base got bored of it, but Warzone seems to be in a little bit of a different scenario. So today, we're going to see if there's anything particularly special about Warzone that makes it actually stand out in the BR family and could potentially make it an all-time classic for years to come. That being said, if you guys enjoyed the video today, I would really appreciate a like rating on this, and subscribe to the channel if you are brand new if you would like more videos. We're getting really close to 300,000 subscribers, so thank you every single one of you. But with that being said, let's go ahead and take a deep dive into Call of Duty Warzone. Warzone is a game that incorporates many iconic locations from the Modern Warfare series and meshes them into one big map, a giant sandbox filled with all of the very memorable locations that were featured within the Modern Warfare series and in games that you might have played in your past. It also offers new systems that have never been seen before in a BR game and certainly not in any other Call of Duty Battle Royale. The question then becomes, what does it do so differently to make it distinguishable amongst every other BR that's come out in the market these days? Is there truly one factor that sets it apart from all the others, or is it a culmination of many? Well, that's what we're going to be looking at. There are some things in Warzone that I feel just are objectively good about the game. It is an incredibly straightforward premise with a very clear goal in mind. Being the last team to survive and getting the coolest gear you can find along the way is pretty much Warzone's entirety in a nutshell. The way the loot system is designed is it's incredibly dynamic, it will be ever-changing, and also makes looting feel rewarding. This came after some tweaking, but is in a very good spot. Looting should not feel like a chore, as it does in some other BR games, as it's one of the most fundamental mechanics that a game has to offer, and if that cannot be fun, then you're already starting off on the wrong foot. Thankfully, Warzone makes looting quite enjoyable and not tedious. The game is also very easy just to pick up and play, but does retain a decently high skill ceiling for players who really want to take their game to the next level or just want to be very good at the game. For example, the way that movement can be utilized, you can tell generally the experience and skill of a player just based on how they move around the map. But the biggest success is the fact that it's not an intimidating game to get into for anybody who's brand new. Maybe someone who's a fan of the BR genre. Warzone is very easy to approach. In fact, I'd even go so far as to say Warzone is the easiest battle royale for the casual gamer. I have some real-life friends that really don't take video games too seriously and don't play them all the time, but they all love both Warzone and Fortnite, and there is a reason for that. On the other side of that coin, there are also some things I feel Warzone just does objectively bad. Persistent problems with cheaters and server issues are never ceasing to be prevalent in the game, and these usually come and go in waves, and it's more prevalent on some platforms than others, but regardless, it's still a problem at the end of the day. Console seems to be the most affected by server issues, and PC is absolutely infested with cheaters. While you can't exactly attribute that fault to the gameplay of Warzone, it is still a factor that plays a role in your enjoyment of said game. Not only that, but because of the complete customizability that your character gives you in COD, it's basically impossible to tell what you're fighting up against in any given squad game. For example, in other BRs, it's really easy to tell what sort of characters you're up against just based on their player model or even what weapons they're shooting. Apex Legends, you can very clearly identify the hero that you're going up against and what abilities they may or may not have and how that's going to affect your gameplay and how you approach. In something like PUBG, you can tell exactly what level armor people have. This gives you way more of an indicator of what weapons and strategies are going to be the most effective to take on that gunfight. In Warzone, the only really indicator that you get for what your enemies are running is if they have a sniper rifle and you see the glint, or if they have a very identifiable weapon on them like a launcher or a riot shield. But other than that, you cannot tell really what sort of armor your enemy is wearing or even what perks or equipment they might be running on themselves, so you kind of go into every fight blind, and I don't really like that too much. But aside from all that, there is yet another system that Warzone implements that is quite different and distinguishable from any other BR that you can play. Dying in Warzone will send you to the Gulag, which is essentially a small 1v1 match, and the winner gets sent back into the game. Warzone attempted to do this to make dying not incredibly punishing and even somewhat fun. Winning the Gulag match will not only snuff your enemy, but will also bring you back into the game, letting you reset and then join your squad once again, so you don't have to wait all the time. However, with the Gulag system and virtually everything just in life, there is a dichotomy. The Gulag allows you, obviously, to have a little bit less weight if you die, because you can have options to respawn. What this invariably does, though, whether you realize it or not, is make the threat of death a little bit less. There's not as many stakes involved. At the same time, whether you think about it or not, it also makes getting kills just a little bit less satisfying, because the harder the punish, the greater the reward, and thankfully or unthankfully, depending on your view, Warzone doesn't punish you too hard for death. And also, while the Gulag is fun the first couple of times around, it can get really old and extremely gimmicky. In fact, many of the new versions of game modes that have come out in Warzone have completely cut out the Gulag as a whole. Stimulus Solos involves none of it, and if you have enough money to respawn, it'll instantly put you back in the game rather than going through that entire process, as people were just backing out in that particular lobby if they died. Warzone succeeds in the fact that it makes dying not the worst thing in the entire world, and it certainly softens the blow, but it also inevitably makes getting kills, and I would even argue winning just in general, a little bit less satisfying. This is also one of the reasons I say Warzone doesn't exactly behave like a battle royale. Typically in BRs, you die once and your game's over. That's kind of the point of it. It's supposed to be very, very high stakes, high suspense gameplay, and while Warzone does retain that to some degree, I would actually more compare it to something like Apex Legends, which is kind of like an arena shooter with BR settings, and that's really what Warzone feels like to me. It's like a big multiplayer match, just with BR rule settings where the map gets smaller, but other than that, the gameplay of just Modern Warfare or Call of Duty plays out almost identically. And that isn't necessarily a praise or a criticism either. It's simply an observation I've made, and Warzone even is fully aware of this fact. They've recently added a classic battle royale setting where there is no respawns, there's no gulag, there's no contracts or anything like that, and it's very much reminiscent of an old school BR. The point I'm trying to make with that is Warzone isn't really a battle royale, and it's its own identity. It's its own kind of game. It's done something that really no other video game has done to this degree, and you have to at least respect it for that. Another very big aspect of BR games is the looting system, and Warzone's has changed a lot since its release, and I think actually got it right. Upon the initial release of the game, Warzone had a very bland and boring loot table, and it got old extremely quickly. People generally just went for cash to get their loadouts and, get their better guns that they run in multiplayer, but essentially almost everything that you pulled either from crates or just found on the ground were simply placeholders until you ended up getting your loadout, which at the time was incredibly cheap and you could have very early on in the game, so looting was almost pointless unless you were looting cash. This was mitigated over time by adding better guns overall to the loot pool and also increasing the amount of money that it requires to obtain a loadout drop. While the guns can still be considered placeholders because when you get into the late game, mostly everyone has obtained a loadout drop by that time, they definitely have much more of a presence than they did in the beginning, and it makes the loot feel more impactful and rewarding. Warzone's armor system is also very straightforward and easy to understand. Some BRs go with the armor system where it just simply adds more HP onto your character. Other ones have more complicated systems where it depends on the type of armor, giving you a specific damage reduction, but Warzone cuts all that out entirely. It just gives you straight up more health and is probably the most streamlined process for HP that I've ever seen in a game like this. While this is easy for simplicity's sake, again, there's a dichotomy to this where it also sort of takes away from the satisfactory times where you pull like a level 3 set of gear or you pull the best version of armor out of a loot chest, and there really is none of that in here. Armor is just armor, and while this is a very good system for simplicity's sake, it does take away a little bit from the variety and replayability of looting armor from game to game. No matter what, even if you've got all of the money in the world on Warzone and you've gotten all your loadout drops and you've obtained every single piece of loot, you never feel stronger in terms of health, or you never feel more like a tank than anyone else running around on the battlefield because there's no way to really have more health than someone else. Is yet another reason why I think Warzone has done so well with most gamers is it's probably the most easy to understand system offered in any game like this. It's also very clear that Warzone was designed to be played in squads or at least with multiple players. Warzone released with 3-man squads only, and I believe that's what it was designed around, and that's how it plays the best. They released solos later on, but for a variety of reasons, solos ended up being not as popular as maybe they should have been, and personally speaking, I think is probably the worst BR experience to play by yourself. Solos are simply not very fun to play, and it becomes entirely obvious that the game is meant to be played in generally a 3 or 4-man squad, and you're supposed to be sharing, resources and money amongst your teammates, coordinating when you're going to get loadout drops and calling in UAVs and stuff. Doing all of this in solo, while it is possible, it's extremely more tedious, and most players just generally tend to stray away from all of the features that the game has to offer. Also, having a system for respawns in a solo BR can be a little bit sketchy as well. Some people, when they die in a solo game, will instantly win their Gulag or just respawn if they're playing the stimulus version and just land right back on top of you to revenge kill you. There's no really rewarding for taking over a position because it can be breached at any time by falling out of the sky and just grabbing that spot. This effectively dampens the reward for positioning yourself well, and generally in a battle royale game, that should serve you very well and even end up letting you win the game. But in Warzone, it doesn't seem to matter too much, as there's really no barriers in place to stop you from getting anywhere you want at any time at all during the match, and especially with the addition of vehicles. And speaking of which, vehicles can be some of the most fun items to use within Warzone, but they're also probably the most inconsistent and unbalanced. But at the end of the day, that's where a lot of the fun within this game comes from, and I think most players are okay with how vehicles are implemented in this game. Besides just the very clear and obvious objective of Warzone, which is just to survive and be the last one standing, the substructure that also makes up many of the Warzone aspects of gameplay have never really been done in a BR game before, and it's yet another reason why I don't really feel like Warzone is a BR. Traditionally in battle royales, you start out with absolutely nothing, you very slowly build your way up, and you scavenge for what you can. You never really get to a point where you feel like you're just incredibly overpowered. You manage to scrape by with what you can find off of just the in-game loot and what you can get off other players, and hopefully be the last man standing. And while Warzone does behave somewhat similarly to that, it's almost the inverse, where you do start out with almost nothing, but you do have a pistol, but you, instead of trying to scavenge for things, you essentially steamroll through the map as quick as you can, trying to build yourself up. The objective is to have the most amount of stuff possible. It's basically just gathering as much equipment, kill streaks, armor, and everything as you can. And while that still traditionally feels like a BR, and that's the same concept, it just feels a lot different in this game. Completing contracts takes the emphasis off of survival and makes you actually approach people and make plays. This rewards you with a large sum of cash, which you can either use to obtain more weapons to make yourself more OP, or you can obtain kill streaks to help the rest of your team. And the cool thing is that if you start off this game hot, you're collecting a lot of loot and you're getting money and everything very quickly, faster than other teams, the odds are that you keep that particular, trend up is very likely. In Warzone, generally speaking, the teams that start the strongest generally finish the strongest. I can really appreciate this mechanic because it also very much rewards good team communication and coordination. And that also ends up being the exact reason that playing this game on your own, either in a squad match or even just playing solos or playing with random teammates, is not always the best experience, because the ones that are communicating and helping each other out are generally going to be the ones that pull ahead, and it's unbelievably difficult to take down a squad that's communicating and if you're not talking to each other. Warzone also features a minimap system that is always on screen, which surprised even me, because the idea is in most BRs, they strip you down to the bare minimum and don't give you as much awareness as you could have, and so that relies heavily on, your particular knowledge of positioning and listening out for people, using all of the auditory and visual cues to spot enemies rather than just looking on your map. And there's ways to reveal literally every enemy on the map within Warzone if you're quick enough. Love or hate the idea of a minimap in BR, it is fundamental to the gameplay of Warzone, as a lot of the mechanics and ideas require you to know where you're going. So for example, buy stations, contracts, and vehicles are all going to be labeled on this minimap, and even gunshots and enemy fire will be shown to you as well. So you don't have to rely necessarily as hard on auditory and visual cues if you pay attention and really look at your minimap. The idea of kill streaks in a BR game was suspect to some people, but I would say in Warzone, it was implemented very nicely. What you have to do is consider what kill streaks you're buying and how that's going to affect the rest of the game later on. You can opt to grab 3 UAVs amongst your team and generally reveal everyone that's around you, but you also sacrifice maybe a little bit of money that you could have put towards having an extra self-revive. So the kill streaks for the most part are not something that can be abused easily and seems to fit really well within the meta of Warzone. The game also makes them very straightforward and easy to use so that literally anyone can call in a precision airstrike and use it effectively. Instead of going for kill streaks, if you opt to obtain your loadout, then you're going to have all of the guns that you requested as well as perks. One complaint I have with the loadout system is that when obtaining perks, it isn't very clear on your player or even in your UI anywhere what perks you currently have. It doesn't display, and also you can't really tell what perks your enemy may or may not have unless they're running Ghost or Cold-Blooded, which you can physically see either by using a heartbeat sensor or a UAV. However, it's almost impossible to tell if your enemy or even your teammates have just something like the double time perk, which allows you to run more, you know? If the perk system was implemented in a little bit more of a clear way where you could tell what your character was running at any given time, and also maybe what your teammates have, and potentially a way to determine what perks your enemies are running, that would make the game significantly better in my opinion. Warzone's gunplay mechanics are relatively simple but implemented nicely, and they fit extremely well with how this game should be played. While it does include elements of realism such as bullet velocity and things of that nature, it doesn't seem to affect guns too much from one weapon to another. Even between classes with SMGs and ARs, you pretty much shoot them the same way, and you don't have to lead your bullets an incredible amount, or you don't need to know the specific velocity of each individual weapon in the game. Not only is it impossible for Warzone, but it's also sort of irrelevant in here, as most guns behave the same. Even though the gunplay mechanics can be simple, there's nothing taken away from the fact that they are just simply fun. It's enjoyable to shoot around in this game, and the gunfighting can be incredibly intense when going up against an entire squad and running your favorite weapon. However, one downside to this a little bit more simplified gunplay is that you do die in this game extremely fast. In almost every other BR I can think of, you can start getting shot in that game, and generally you're gonna at least have enough time to react to it, and maybe you won't win the gunfight or even doing that much damage, but you'll know potentially what you could have done better or even have some kind of chance of winning that gunfight. But in Warzone, sometimes you just walk into the wrong line of sight, you die, and there's nothing you could have done. Sometimes in Warzone, you just have to accept the fact that you literally walked into the wrong lane and you are going to get killed, and that can be extremely frustrating when it happens over and over again, but it kind of does guarantee you free kills if you play Warzone enough. People are going to run into you also. One of the most defining features in any BR is the way the zone behaves, and the zone in Warzone is pretty brutal for a variety of reasons. It moves relatively quickly and almost prevents any zone camping whatsoever, as it takes away a ton of damage. However, the zone in Warzone is something that I think could do with some tweaking. It's one of the things that aren't incredibly refined. The way that some of the geometry of the buildings are laid out, and also the terrain of the mountains and stuff, sometimes the zone can end up trapping you in a situation where you literally cannot either climb a mountain or get through a building without trying to go through the zone, or even just potentially being screwed by being trapped by it. A well-designed map and zone should bring players together, but you should never just be fundamentally screwed if you position yourself like maybe at the bottom of a hill or behind a building that doesn't have an extra door. These are all things that are part of map design and the way that the blue moves. Warzone does really well at the zone bringing players together, but it isn't the most sophisticated when it comes to how it rotates with you and all the options you have based on where you are. And again, that isn't exactly a fault of the zone system itself, but it's more or less a comment on some of the map design. Not to mention, Warzone is also going to be a game that continues to get updated and supported as the years go on, and from my understanding, will probably be the COD BR from here on out. I don't think the next game is going to feature a battle royale, so this means Warzone is still going to be the go-to, and it's going to continue to grow and evolve over time, not only due to map changes, loot readjustments, and rebalances, brand new game modes that they're always pushing out, and just trying to generally keep the game fresh. Ever since its release, Warzone was trying to earn its seat at the dinner table of the Battle Royale family, and I would actually say at this point in time, it has done so very well. Warzone was able to essentially capture the essence of BR while not really even being a Battle Royale in that sense. It's distinct enough so that BR veterans can have something to latch onto, and it's very very approachable for a casual gamer and maybe somebody who's never been introduced to the BR genre before. The previous Call of Duty Battle Royale, Blackout, was one that sort of came and went. It had its spike in popularity, but it did taper off in the end. And Warzone doesn't really seem to be behaving the same way. You could attribute that to the fact that Warzone is free to play, while Blackout technically was not, and while that has to be a factor to some degree, I believe there's a lot more going on with Warzone than Blackout ever had to offer. Also, being a free-to-play game with full functioning crossplay certainly helped its case, and there's no taking away from that. While crossplay may not be implemented perfectly in Warzone, and I don't think any game in general has got it right just yet, it's at least a start. Warzone is proof of concept that virtually every platform can play together, at least with some semblance of harmony, and I think that was one of the biggest successes of this game. I think it's going to open the door for many games in the future to come and potentially implement crossplay a bit better, but Warzone definitely took the giant leap of faith. All of the shortcomings of this game are equally balanced out by the wonderful things that it does as well, making it distinct not only as a video game, but just as a trendsetter within the gaming industry as a whole. I think Warzone is going to do way more for the future than we give it credit for. All in all, Warzone surprised me. Before it came out, I just thought it was going to be another COD BR that was going to come and go, but it inevitably ended up being one of the most played BRs for me. This is a testament to the quality of its gameplay and the very clear care that Infinity Ward put into the game when developing this Warzone. You may not love every aspect of the game, and there certainly is room for criticism, but you cannot deny the really great things that it has done. In my opinion, Call of Duty Warzone will go down in the history of BRs as at least one of the greats, or it will have a seat at the table. It's become an absolute casual fan classic, and I really think you have to give it some props. But with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that is my review on Call of Duty Warzone. Let me know down below in the comment section what you think of this game. Do you agree with my review? Do you disagree with anything? I would love to know your opinions down below, and let me know if you're still playing Warzone, or maybe if you just played it in the beginning and you got bored of it, or if you're still playing it every single day right now. I'd love to know your thoughts down below in the comment section, guys, but if you enjoyed the video, drop a like, subscribe if you're brand new, and I'll see you guys in the next stream or the next video. Have a good one, and peace out.